Welcome to the Westside Investors Network, WIN, your community of investing knowledge for growth. This is the Real Estate Professionals Investing Podcast for real estate professionals by real estate professionals. This show is focused on the next step in your career, investing. Thank you for listening, and please, if you like our content, rate us on your podcast provider. And now, your hosts, AJ and Chris Shepard.
All right, today we've got Taylor Loht on the podcast. We will talk about how he got started in the real estate industry, specifically with syndications. He talks about the outbound and the inbound strategy that he uses and which one is better. What is the value of having a coach and a mentor, and how he was able to learn from people that he met in the industry. So let's welcome Taylor. All right, we got Taylor on with us today. Taylor Loht is with Passive Wealth Strategy Podcast. He's a multifamily real estate syndicator, and we're going to talk about how to build some trust with investors today and overcome some capital issues or whatnot. So Taylor, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Happy to do that. So like you said, I buy multifamily with passive investors, and split the return is the way I like to put it, just to let people know really what the function of a syndicator is helping people get into real estate without being active in their deals. And that's kind of the way I like to put it.
Awesome. Do you want to maybe tell us, how did you get into doing that? Where did it all start?
It's going to be an answer. My answer is really very similar to many other real estate investors out there, in that, working professional, busy professional, wanting to earn more, build wealth, and really prepare for my financial future. Big thing for me is my parents are in their late 50s now. They're totally fine. They're in a good position financially, but someday they're not going to be, hopefully, I guess. Hopefully they make it that long. I'm happy to have them around. And I want to be able to take care of them when that time comes, and have the funds to do it. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go out there and look at the cost of elder care these days, and to expect that cost is going to continue to rise exponentially. So years ago, I was looking and I saw my career trajectory as what it was, and just I knew it was what was going to happen. I can do the math and see I'm not going to earn enough to achieve my goals. So,
Taylor,
sure.
Oh, hey, it's Chris Shepard. Taylor, I really love that you've got such a dialed in why you're doing what you're doing. And I mean, for me, that is one of the biggest reasons to understand why you're doing it and why to chase financial freedom. So I love that. It's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. I mean, I think I totally agree. It's very important for anybody who wants to get into real estate and, really have the push to go through, tough times, to know why you're doing it. So, years ago, I found myself in that situation, and I kind of came from the background where, okay, you want to make more money? Go to school, So my trajectory at the time was, okay, I'm going to go back to school. My background's in chemical engineering. I'm going to go back to school, get my MBA, and figure it out from there. Because, right, you go to school, MBAs, at least in the 80s, was a good way to go back to school and make more money. While I took the GMAT and everything, while I'm getting ready to write applications, I just so happened to pick up a book that, many real estate investors have read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that completely, I already had some misgivings in my head because, again, going back to the math, MBA school might be $120,000, maybe $150,000, not even counting the opportunity cost of not working for 2 years. And it's tough to make up that investment when you realize that the only way to make it up is through working more hours, right? Or working more time, trading hours for dollars. And Kiyosaki really just kind of turned that on my head. I had already, or turned that idea on its head and changed my mind. I had already been listening to real estate podcasts here and there. I think that's probably where I heard about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and just completely, I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to business school. I got to figure something else out, and kind of took it from there.
Awesome. So growing up, how did your household and your parents' values kind of shape how you got to where you are?
That is such an interesting question, because I think about that pretty frequently. So like I said, I think about it a lot. So just to flesh it out a little bit more, both of my parents are from the same small town in Pennsylvania. It's a steel town, and the steel mill is still there, but it's a tiny shadow of what it once was. And both of my grandfathers worked at that steel mill. They had different roles. My dad's father on that side also was a farmer. He owned a farm, and that man worked, I kid you not, until just before he died. He was out there on the farm. He had retired in his 60s, but he was out there on the farm cutting wood and building the fire to heat their house until, again, I'm not joking, he died. He was 92. He died, he was 92, building the fire until a month before he died. He got gas heat installed in their house, and then he died a month later. So he didn't just retire and, sit on his butt. He was still working the farm, his capacity diminished. But it really comes from there, right? It was work hard, get a good job, find something to do. Fortunately, my grandparents and everything, they instilled in my parents the concept or the value of a good education. And for me, like I know a lot of guys and women who, in their late teens dropped out of college or never went to college, and they're successful business people now. Not going to college was not an option for me. It was, this is what you're doing, and that's going to be what it is. And, in becoming a real estate investor, I do have some family members who are real estate investors, but, it just wasn't something that I grew up with at all. It was really more you go work to put food on your table, which is great. Real estate investing is work, don't get me wrong, but there wasn't a concept of building systems and strategies to
creating passive wealth.
Yeah.
So do you think it was just Rich Dad, Poor Dad that just kind of plucked you out of that path? I mean, because I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad too, and like that really, spurred me on. But our dad was a real estate investor. He was a landlord his whole life, and we grew up watching him, sun tanning, reading his magazine, and he's like 42 years old.
Playing bridge all day.
And it's just but he also worked very hard when he worked. It was just, he had gotten himself to a position to where, he owned real estate notes and was able to live off of those notes. And so do you think it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
I think it was. Like I said, I had been listening to podcasts at the same time too. And, other things, something else I kind of skipped over, after I graduated from college, got a job and not making anywhere near as much money as I wanted to, but I was getting paid, living in an apartment. One day I was driving to work and I passed by the office of the apartment complex, and I saw sitting out front, I like cars, sitting out front, I saw, if memory serves, it was like an Audi S7, which is a nice car. It's not a Lambo, but they're very nice cars. And I thought, I bet anything that is the guy or woman who owns this complex. And that has really just stuck in my mind, because I was driving an old Volkswagen Jetta at the time. It was a decent car, but it wasn't in any sense fancy. And I don't know, that has just stuck in my head as well. Really, it was, in a sense, I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad kind of confirmed some misgivings I had in my mind of, I'm looking at investing all this money. I mean, $300,000+ when you factor in cost plus the cost of it itself plus opportunity cost. And I'm going to get some other career where you go be a banker. And I knew I didn't want to be a banker, right? I don't want to work 100 hours on Wall Street to, live in some fancy apartment in Manhattan. That's fine, but that's not what I want to do. I didn't want to go. I've lived a life where I traveled around the country all the time on a weekly basis. That's consulting. I knew I didn't want to do that. And that just, Rich Dad, Poor Dad really, I think, cemented in my mind the concept that it's possible to build systems that generate passive income and wealth. And I think that, going back to the legacy of one of my grandfathers being a farmer, there's still that value, there's still that knowledge of the value of real estate ownership. Farming is not a passive income activity, at least the way that that he did it, but there's intrinsic knowledge that was, I guess, passed down to me that there's wealth in owning property. I just needed those extra pieces to show that, you don't need to, if you want to invest in real estate, you don't need to go buy single family on the corner up the street and manage it yourself. I've had family friends and, friends' parents growing up who owned rental properties. And there are other ways to, like you said, your dad built up his note portfolio. I mean, that's one way. I don't know. I just see that as a pivot point in my life, I suppose, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad.
That's awesome.
I'm one of many
yeah.
who have read that.
No,
book.
I mean, there's a lot of people that have that kind of same epiphany, or that's one of the books that's like widely recommended. And so that's kind of like where the starting point is. And you're now in syndication and have done some deals. I think we kind of wanted to talk about, like, you're talking with investors, you're looking for deals. Like, when you're talking to those investors, like, how are you going about developing those relationships and, getting them to trust, or they are trusting you and putting their capital with you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the best way to really put the current model that many syndicators like me that we're pursuing is inbound versus outbound. And this was, again, reframed for me. Just last night, I was on a call with a gentleman who raises a lot of capital. You got to spend a lot of time with these guys who are a couple rungs above you to continue learning their strategies. But it's exactly what we're doing here. It starts with a thought leadership platform. So I host a podcast, as you mentioned earlier. I started a meetup in Richmond, Virginia a few years ago, pre-COVID, obviously, to just get out there and get in front of people. And that's where it starts. You get out there, you say, here's what I am, here's who I am, here's what I do. And now we're going to, in the case of a podcast interview, we're going to interview an interesting person who you might be interested in hearing about. And in going along with that, your audience out there is getting to know you. The both of you, Chris and AJ, they're getting to know me on my show. And sometimes some of those people will connect with you. And if you're out there saying, I syndicate real estate, I buy real estate with passive investors, some of those folks will come to you and say, hey, I want to learn more. And that's kind of where it starts. It's a different model from going to, a networking group and trying to pass out business cards and, hey, here's what I do. You want to, invest with me, blah, 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 or build that relationship from there. That's outbound. Really what we're doing here. And, the podcast model now, the thought leadership model, is an inbound strategy. You're putting yourself out there. You're not soliciting an investment. You're just saying, this is what I do. If you want to learn more, great, hit me up. If not, then, that's great too.
Yeah. And I think I've heard of this kind of like, it's like the hunter gatherer or the like order taker, as kind of like with sales. Like, and then there's like the rainmaker too. I think there's like 3 levels. But so what you're saying is there's the outbound where like you're going and finding stuff, and then this podcast, people get to know you and then they actually come to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a thought leadership platform, whether it's a podcast, I know folks that, do a lot of webinars, or they've taken their meetups online. It's a matter of putting yourself out there and providing a way for people to come find you. It scales a lot better than going out and hunting people down. And plus, everybody out there, they're initiating the interaction, right? I'm putting it, and you guys are putting this content out there, and it's more like nobody likes being sold, right?
Yeah, no.
I don't. Nobody does.
Yeah.
It's very different when you feel a connection with someone and then reach out to them and try to and want to learn more about getting involved in their business.
So when someone like reaches out to you and says like, hey, I'm interested in learning more, can you take us through like what maybe some other steps are, or how you continue to foster that relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so really what we do is connect on a phone call or a Zoom call. Phone calls are much more my favorite, but my goal when I get on a call with someone who might be interested in investing is really just to learn about them and their goals, because I'm not in the business of, wasting my time. I'm not in the business of wasting their time, right? And if the types of things we do are not the right fit for them, then that's totally fine. By either one of our judgments, but it's really learning about them, their history, whether or not, in the case of syndications, you want to learn whether or not they're sophisticated enough, whether or not they're accredited and how they're accredited, and all these things that go along with compliance. But on a person to person level, you want to know if it's going to be a good fit when you present an investment to them. Okay, maybe they're interested at the time. Do they, if they invest $100,000, are they prepared for a 5-year, a 7-year illiquid investment? Some people are, some people are not. That's great, but you really want to learn whether or not the fit is good from both directions.
Awesome.
I really love the idea of the inbound versus outbound communication. Like if you have investors or maybe even with the deal sourcing process of being a syndicator or a real estate agent, like if you have people, homeowners or apartment owners reaching out to you because you've created this content or information out there, how you've got a solution for the problem that they have, and now they're reaching out to you, it's just a completely different conversation than it is to like, hello, is this such and such property owner? Have you thought about selling your property? Click.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that idea.
It's a big way of it's kind of how a lot of digital marketing works today. It's not a completely brand new idea, to the internet, basically it's just applying different principles, and content, and people who are interested, that's great. And people who just want the content, that's great too. That's why it's there,
So if somebody was like new to this, to the idea of, switching their marketing from outbound to inbound, how would you say, well, how did you get started? When you made your transition, when did you kind of switch from cold calling or reaching out to individuals versus just kind of planting seeds and then letting the business grow?
So, I mean, to be honest with you, this is just kind of the way I've done it. I do go to conferences. I do talk with people, and folks that are interested, we take it from there. But, this is kind of the way I set it up. And it's because, I can't even claim originality for the idea. I hired a mentor and he showed me the way he does it. And that's the way I'm doing it. Obviously we put our own spin on things that we do no matter what. Hopefully, I think if we're being genuine, we put our own spin on things, but it's really, applying a proven model. Mentor Joe Fairless out there, many of you guys are probably familiar with his show.
Yes, we are.
Yep.
It's just, I hate to say copycat, right? Because I do pay him, right? But, it's using his strategy, really, building a podcast. I've hosted another podcast previously that I got tired of and I decided to pivot, and, it's okay. But yeah, building the meetup was his idea. Having a podcast was his idea, and that's why I'm here.
Building a brand.
Exactly.
Okay. So a lot of our listeners have this hurdle of, okay, I'm ready to start investing in real estate, but I don't have any capital. So how have you overcome, not having capital, and through like finding investors or creating partnerships with your investors?
That's an interesting idea. I would say that syndication, generally speaking, from either the syndicator or the passive investor side, is not a no money down type of game. It's not free. That doesn't mean it's pay to play necessarily, but setting up a syndication, like getting an asset under contract, all the legal fees and everything, you get into multiple tens of thousands of dollars of sunk costs until a typical deal is closed. So it's not a no money down, I have no money in the bank type of game. There are folks out there who get into syndications or get into the syndication game by bringing deals to syndicators. I don't know how much that's happening more recently with the way, especially the multifamily market is now. There's Brandon Turner's fund, Open Door Capital, does pay people to bring him deals. So if you can pay for a list and market to mobile home park owners and get one under contract and bring it to him, then, that'll be, I think it's $100,000. So that's pretty good. But setting up a syndication itself is not free to do. So, the way I got capital was saving a lot of money, investing in other things before I got into real estate. But, I live way below my means because, I'm 31. I have a nice car. I have a decent place to live. Like, that's fine. I can delay gratification because the dollar figure is going to be much bigger in 10 or 20 years. And I'm perfectly okay with that. So, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that differentiates the syndication space from a lot of other areas of real estate where you can make up for lack of capital on pure hustle. That's not to say you need to be, a multimillionaire to get into syndication. But if you don't have a few tens of grand in your pocket, then it's going to be, I think, very difficult to get started.
So as you're getting started in syndication, you're partnering with some other people in the GP, isn't that right?
Yes, definitely.
Nice. And so how's that going? Is that, because that's sort of, like you maybe don't have the brand capital or the financial statement to qualify. Like, in some considerations, that's capital.
Yeah, absolutely. Building a brand, it's a big investment of time and energy. You guys know that with your brand building. We originally connected on Bigger Pockets, AJ, I think. That's not accidental on your part or on my part that we're on Bigger Pockets a lot, and it's not accidental that we're here on a podcast. It's not accidental that, I have other podcasts that I'm, recording for myself and everything. And building that brand, comes with time, and it can accelerate by listening to others who have done it before you and copying their ideas or taking the ones that are right or the ones that, resonate with you and applying them to your business. But yeah, that brand capital comes with time. Those partnerships, they come with time too, and effort and building relationships and, talking with people. I'm on a few other real estate investing forums, and a big thing for me personally right now is looking to build more of those tight connections that I can, general partner with and put deals together with. The ones we have going now are great, and I want to continue expanding in that space. So once I'm done with my Bigger Pockets efforts for the day, each evening, I get on other forums and reach out to people who I know are doing big things and get to talk with them, see if it's a good fit, see if, maybe we'd be interested in partnering. And if you can really connect with people on a deeper level, I think that helps considerably, whether it's partnering with others in a general partnership or looking for, passive investments. I talked with a gentleman earlier today who's got 3 kids who are all roughly my age range, and they're in late 20s, early to mid 30s. And, despite our age difference, we have a few things in common. I can relate to him through, my father and my relationship with my dad. And, they have a lot in common. They don't know each other at all, but, they're guys in their late 50s, early 60s. There's commonalities, and, maybe that'll turn into something, right? But
yeah,
that's going to come with time, and that's kind of how it's done. It's just putting in the effort and building connections.
Yeah. And I think like with those connections is like, you never know who you're going to talk to or who someone else knows too. Right.
Yeah.
Like there's plenty of times when like I've introduced myself to someone and then it's like one of their friends or one of their family members is like the one that really is like interested in our business or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think what you said was like taking the time and like really educating people and providing value is something that they will really appreciate. And even though they may not be able to do it right away, but return the favor sooner or later down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. The syndication space is tiny, especially, I don't really care what niche you're in, right? There's not a lot of people in what we do. That is not to say that everybody knows everybody, but probably whoever you're talking to, knows a few people who you know, and they may know your reputation, maybe not, but I think it's important to keep those things in mind. And I think the most successful people in this space are very good at forging those connections and finding out people's deeper motivations and deeper desires, and doing their best to add value to that if they can.
I like that. So Taylor, you mentioned that you found Joe Fairless and he basically hired him on as a mentor. How has that gone for you? And can you just describe a little bit about how having a mentor made things different, and I guess made things easier than not having a mentor?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't really know if I knew what I was getting into when I first, said this is what I'm going to do. Actually, I'm certain I didn't know what I was getting into.
Are you talking that with respects to the amount of work it is, or?
Well, sure. I think yes, that is certainly relevant, especially early on for me in this game. I didn't know, how long of a road it is, and I didn't know. You don't know what happens on the back end until you get into the back end. All the stuff that happens, you only know the facade by looking at other syndicators or, real estate investors, things like that. And for me, I brought Joe on as a coach, and I spun my wheels for a while. And it's nothing about Joe at all. It has nothing to do with Joe. It was that I didn't understand the level of commitment that was required. The late nights, this is going to sound ridiculous, but my favorite thing to do, just personally, my favorite leisure activity is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And we had a little drought there during the COVID pandemic, but where I live, we're back on now.
Nice.
But I've been doing it for 6 years. If I could, I'm not too beaten up yet with chronic injuries. One of my thumbs doesn't quite work right. But if I could, that would be what I would do all the time. But I can't. And one of the things, and again, I know it sounds ridiculous, but one of the things I had to do was realize I got to cut back on that stuff, even though it's good for you, it's exercise, but I would be there all the time. You got to cut back on the things that you want to do in the short term and invest that time in yourself and your business and what have you, and really commit. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And, you guys might be familiar with Trevor McGregor, who is Joe's, business performance results coach. And I hired Trevor too, because that's one of the things I was struggling with, and I didn't really understand it. But, from bringing Trevor on and then just getting to know other syndicators well and learning about, what they do, it has helped me. It helped me commit more. It helped me, work harder, even though we're not necessarily saying work harder is the right answer, but that's what's helped here is, just seeing the incredible amount of hustle and drive. And I'll tell you one guy, and I haven't talked to him in a little while, but one guy whose trajectory has inspired me more than anybody else's, and I consider him a friend, is Whitney Sewell. I live in Richmond. Whitney lives in Roanoke, and he's in Joe's, coaching group too. I joined before Whitney. After Whitney signed up, he went into our common group and he said, "Hey, I'm in Roanoke, blah, blah, blah. Anybody want to meet up?" And I said, "Great." And he was coming to Richmond at the time for the work that he did. And he and I sat down. I had a coffee. He doesn't drink coffee, but I had a coffee and we talked and I got to know him a bit. He's a super nice guy. But in watching him and having, informal mentors like him, not just him, but I'm singling him out for a reason because he is awesome. That can really help, push you along and motivate you and like help show you the way in these spaces, even though, I don't know how often he thinks about me. Like I said, I haven't talked to him in a little while, but he's out there inspiring me. And I know many others just through, he's got his mission related to as regards adoptions and everything. And that's awesome. He's just a great guy. I mean, I think everybody that I know that has talked to him has enjoyed it. And he and I we attended a few conferences together. We ultimate partnering and things like that. And one of Michael Blanc's conferences a little while ago. And just, watching him has been more inspirational. Sounds a little pie in the sky and not boots on the ground. but inspirational, motivating, instructive by watching what he does.
Just watching somebody do well.
Oh, yeah.
It's encouraging, it's like, wow, he's doing great. I'm super happy for him. I know that it can be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's the thing about, you can do two main things with watching somebody succeed. You can say exactly that. You can say, oh, I'm so excited for him. What can I learn? How can I, follow in his footsteps or watch what he's done and apply some of those lessons to my business and my life? Or you could say, that guy doesn't deserve that. Why is he blah, blah, blah? And it helps because Whitney's a great guy, but it doesn't take him out of the equation. And just anybody and watching their success, whether or not you're envious, jealous, whatever, what can you learn from? And is there anything you can take and apply to your own life and business?
So Taylor, having gone through, and still being a part of a mentorship and receiving coaching, what do you think the biggest value is about having a coach and having a mentor? And, I hear a lot of, group, people who get a coach and then they join a group and they're like, I get so much out of the kind of the mastermind or the network part of that group. And there's some benefit of the coach or the mentor. What is it for you? And then, what is it like? What is it about coaching and mentorship that's made a big impact for you?
I mean, there's a few things, right? When times get tough, I can look and say, look, I've invested a lot of money in this business and, it's bearing fruit, but I've invested a lot of money and a lot of time. This is maybe I'm having a hard day or a hard week right now with, I don't know, I think this week I'm probably recording 14 podcasts. Okay, that's not great, but it's going to be over. And what am I going to let, I was really exhausted on Wednesday. What am I going to let that stop me? Or, whatever, a deal falls through, we don't close on something. What am I going to let this stop me? And then, having a resource there, Joe's got over $1 billion in assets under management right now. He's run into many of the situations that I run into, I'm running into now. Right. And I can ask him and get his input and everything. And you're right. The network is very helpful, getting to meet other people who are in the program who have, been in a similar position as me. And, maybe they've, because we don't all present the same circumstances, maybe they've received guidance from him that I haven't received because I haven't been in that position. I haven't needed it. But if I pick their brain, maybe I can learn something from them that they learned from him. And it just takes me that much further. But you get out of it what you put into it. I think, I can't speak for every coaching program out there, but for the listeners, for you guys, if you've been in a meetup, if you've been in any of these conferences or, seminars, and you go to them a couple of times, you're going to see people come and go. And some of those people come and go because they decide the business isn't right for them or whatever, but they're just people who aren't going to do the work. And, it's okay, but, just have to refuse to be one of those folks, I suppose, and put the work in.
I definitely have heard you definitely get what you put in, you get out what you put into it. And if you're gonna work it, then it's gonna be successful. Especially I do a lot of volunteer work with NARPM, and that is cool. All about if I put more work into it, we get more out of it. There's no doubt about that. So, well, Chris, I think we're probably ready for the. Oh no.
Oh yeah. We're ready.
We're ready. We got 4 questions for you at the end here, just to wrap things up. So the first one's, what's one piece of advice you would give to your 25-year-old self?
I spent some time thinking about this, right? Because, like I said, I'm 31. It wasn't that long ago. I suppose this is personal. It's not related to business. I had a girlfriend at the time that we just weren't the right fit for each other. She's a good person. There's nothing wrong with her. Nothing wrong. We just weren't the right fit. And I think I knew at the point we shouldn't be together. And I would probably say, you should listen to that instinct. That would be the number one, I think. Again, nothing personal on her at all whatsoever. We're just not a right fit. And I think that time is so important. That would be the best thing for the both of us at the time. Very personal though.
So
No worries,
kind
that's
of like
fine.
listen to your heart and believe it and act on it.
Yeah, feel the gut.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's a
Okay,
good way to put it.
cool. So what was your first entrepreneurial endeavor?
I'm not one of those guys who was buying packs of gum when he was, 6 and then selling off the individual, maybe not 6, 8, selling off the individual sticks. I'm not one of those guys. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was, again, the first thing that really kind of turned my eyes to, taking the reins of this thing and building it myself. So I would say my first entrepreneurial endeavor has been becoming a real estate investor and a real estate syndicator.
Cool. That's a large leap too into the entrepreneurial world.
Well, if I can expand on that, I mean, I had a guy on my show recently who you guys may be familiar with. I don't know. His name's Dylan Marma. He got into syndication when he was 20. And, when I talked to him, he was 26, right? And he worked with Jake and Gino for a while. Now he's got his own fund he's building. And I just think the limiting beliefs thing, the concept of limiting beliefs is so important. I mean, if you look at it and see, oh, wow, that's a tall mountain to climb, it's going to be a lot harder to climb. But if you look at like the next step in front of you and take that step, it's a lot easier to just keep doing that than to stare at the peak the whole time.
Yeah.
And try to go from there.
Yeah. I mean, those outlandish the goals, the big, hairy, audacious goal or BHAGs are, just breaking them down until where you've got just like one tiny step. Like, what's my minimum next step for tomorrow or today? Like, what do I need to get done by today in order to like make one step closer to that?
100%.
My Chris is always like touting like, well, what's our minimum next step? What's our minimum next step?
I'm like just repeating myself all the time, asking the team, what's the minimum next step?
All right. So moving on, how has your formal and informal training shaped your journey?
Well, yeah, so we talked a lot about today in our discussion is ways in which it's, shaped my journey. I'd say I've probably, I hate to, because we've mentioned so many names, I hate to sound like I'm ragging on anybody, but I think I've gotten more out of like informal training than anything else. I mean, just a year ago, I was at a mastermind at the Renault winery with a bunch of names that, you guys would recognize. Try not to name drop anymore. But one of the other attendees, after the event, he's, one of the other attendees is a successful syndicator. We get to talking and he asked me about some of the issues I was having at the time, with my business and podcast and everything. And, there's always issues. That's just the way it is. And I expressed some of those to him and he gave me some ideas that, I mean, just they were an inflection point to me. And this is a guy who's got a very successful background in corporate marketing with major brands, and then pivoted, built his own real estate portfolio, got into syndication. And, just because he's a nice guy and I guess he liked me enough, right? He gave me some ideas that just, hit me at that point where, it had been in my mind that weekend. I mentioned to him, hey, I'm having trouble with this thing. And I mean, I could have, would have talked to Joe about this as well later on, but he gave me this idea and I ran with it. And it's all these other things. It's watching Whitney and his level of success and learning from him and talking to him. And every time I sit down with him, like we go to dinner or something when he comes to Richmond, I mean, I'm just picking his brain the whole time. Try to be respectful, right? But like try to learn from him and his whole journey and everything. And you pick up a lot of things by getting to know others and learning from their experiences and people, because it's back to Dale Carnegie, right? We haven't mentioned Dale Carnegie, but people love talking about themselves. So do I, right? Everybody does. And, they love talking about their businesses. Oh, what's this thing that you did that, took you whatever, or this last deal you closed? How did you get that? Where'd you find that? The gentleman that I talked with earlier today, I mean, we talked for a little while and most of our conversations was about his kids and his family. And that was great because, we have something in common in that way. And I think that'll lead to a deeper connection down the road. And he also told me about how he closed in this really cool deal and how he got it and everything. So I learned something there. But, you can't discount the informal training. I think it's so very important.
Oh,
you know.
you can't, like, just reading and just the desire to continue to learn is huge.
Yep.
Okay, our final question. What was your Moby Dick of real estate, the one that got away?
Yeah, I thought about this one for a while as well. I have not actually read Moby Dick, but I am familiar with the terminology.
With the white whale?
With the white whale. So, yeah, I had to think about this. It was the Great Recession and the recovery from the Great Recession, because I graduated from college in 2011 and then you started working, and I was investing. I mean, I was frugal at the time. I invested everything I had and everything I could spare in the market, in stocks and equity, but I hadn't learned about real estate yet for another couple of years. And I've gone on to meet so many people who built just amazing portfolios at that same time. They were really hustling, but within the span of a couple of years, they were doing so many deals. The COVID recession's impact on real estate, I think, still remains to be seen as we're talking. But I don't think we're gonna. I hope, frankly, in our lifetime, we're not going to get that big of a crash of real estate again, and that great of a buying opportunity. And I think that's the one that got away, but there was so much like heartache that came along with it. I'm okay with that. I mean, I've accepted that. I would say that's the one, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a similar stock portfolio that got crushed during that time period too. And and I also bought a couple houses right before the crash.
Oh, man.
Yeah, there was definitely opportunity that got away early on, but you never know where the bottom. At the time, nobody knew where the bottom was. That's one of our sayings, is like, it doesn't matter when you buy, as long as you keep buying. As long as you keep buying, you'll hit the top, you'll hit the bottom, and you'll average out. And if it keeps going up, you're going to be great. And also buy for income, making sure that it cash flows and all that sort of stuff. And as a syndicator, you're always doing that. You're just trying to maximize the income as much as possible.
All about that cash flow. I think that's what it comes down to.
Never sell.
Well, Taylor, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Really appreciate you coming out. And
same here.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Real Estate Professionals Investing Podcast on WIN, your community for investing knowledge for growth. Please take a second to rate us so that we can get more great investors to interview. If you or someone you know wants to be on, please go to westsideinvestors.com and fill out our form.